Thousands, if not millions, of articles are published every single day on the internet. But just because somebody writes something doesn't mean that you should believe it. This is the world of critical thinking. In this video, I'm going to explain my approach to critically analysing an article using a worked example that you can follow along with. The article that we're going to use is from the British Medical Journal, although it's not a research article, and it's called How AstraZeneca Lost the PR War. Was there a PR war? Who are AstraZeneca? Is any of this true? Well, we're going to find out. Now, I'm going to put the link in the description so you can give it a skim read and see what you think of it before you watch the next bit. Okay, so the first question I ask myself when I read an article is, do I think this is any good? It's just a general gut feeling, and it's important to notice what that gut feeling is. I think this article is alright. I'm not very convinced by its author, but I did think that some of the information that it talked about was really useful. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Now we've noted what our gut feeling is, we're going to dig a bit deeper into it. The next thing that we have to think is, what is the main argument? Now it's best if we can summarise what the main argument is in one sentence. This is the goal of the article, it's what it wants you to think. This article is essentially a defence of AstraZeneca, which is saying, they were treated unfairly and they've done the best in hard circumstances. Now, why do we think that that's the main argument the article's making? Well, it's due to these little taglines. So it talks about adding salt to the wound. It includes a sentence in the introduction that says, it's not clear why the company has been singled out for so much criticism. It also uses the passive voice. It continually talks about these things that are happening to AstraZeneca, not ever engaging with the idea that AstraZeneca might be itself the cause of some of these events. And then the other thing that it says is AstraZeneca isn't a traditional vaccine manufacturer, which kind of implies that you should be trying to root for the plucky underdog and feel sympathy for them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look past all that and look at some of the cold hard logic in this article. What were the main subclaims or evidence that were given to support these arguments? Firstly, they say that AstraZeneca only made minor mistakes in communication. This implies that the regulator's treatment is unjustified. The second claim was that there was lots of mitigating factors, which should have meant that AstraZeneca got treated more favourably. They were trying to report honestly. Once they had set the data analysis method, they couldn't change it. And AstraZeneca was actually supplying the vaccine at cost price. The third thing that is claimed is that despite the blood clots, the vaccine was actually safe. The benefits, this article claims, outweighed the risks. And the fourth claim is that AstraZeneca were the victims of scare stories. At first I thought they hadn't cited this claim, but then I found out that they have, and they also do some hand-wavy suggesting something about Brexit geopolitics, and the suggestion that there was a deliberate misinformation campaign. So what were the main impacts or relevance that were claimed for these arguments? Basically, they said that the unfair media reporting of AstraZeneca had more of an impact on whether people took up their vaccine or not, and that whether the governments actually took up and funded the vaccine was more dependent on geopolitical considerations rather than the merits of the vaccine itself. Okay, so now that we've understood the main arguments this article's making, we are now in a position to comment on whether we agree with them. We've got to be able to say that we understand what is being said before we start to criticise it. So, how do we go about critiquing the article? Well, in Mortimer Adler's book, How to Read a Book, he talks about 4 criteria based on which you can disagree with somebody. And I think that this is useful. Firstly, was it uninformed? Was there information which we're aware of that they're not aware of that would have changed the argument that this article is making? Well, no, I think that it mentions quite a lot of depth about the reporting. It's not uninformed about the situations that it's talking about. Was it misinformed? Were any of the evidence and arguments that it was relying on actually factually incorrect? I have to say I was a little bit skeptical about this misinformation campaign in the German news article, but it turns out they backed up the citation and went and checked it. So no, I don't think they're misinformed either. The third grounds for disagreeing is that the author has been illogical in how they've used their evidence. And I think there is some bad logic here. On the one hand, the article suggests that regulators have been heavy-handed with AstraZeneca. Then it also says that the company made mistakes in how it handled the communication. So why not believe that the heavy-handed approach was as a result of some of the communication errors and a loss of trust stemming from that? That seems more likely than what the article actually says. The second piece of bad logic here, I think, is in trying to say that AstraZeneca's tried as hard as they can. Even if that is true, and it seems like it is true, that doesn't justify lowering the standards for which the vaccine should be tested, or for losing trust in a company that isn't aware of how to, or doesn't have the experience to meet those criteria. We're talking about vaccine safety here, and that's important. Finally, you can criticise an author on the basis of incompleteness. You have to say that the author's not fully used their evidence or their arguments to the best advantage that they could, and so you have to say how they could have done that. That doesn't seem to apply here, so we're going to skip over it. So finally we come to the summary, and we've got to ask, well, what do we still agree with? What's our conclusion? I think we have to say is that, well, on this article, it does seem like the vaccine is safe. That sort of fits with other evidence that I know about the benefits outweighing the risks of these blood clots versus the risk of blood clots from COVID and the risk of long COVID. So still get your vaccine. I also agree that the source of a lot of this trouble with AstraZeneca has been miscommunication from them. But here's the most important thing. I disagree that this was because AstraZeneca was treated unfairly. AstraZeneca were an inexperienced company. They were brought in to manufacture a vaccine which was good, but they created a lot of mistrust through their communication. And all because the UK government wanted a British company to do this rather than an experienced company. On the basis of this article, I'd want to know more about what the UK government's role was in securing AstraZeneca as the corporate backer for this vaccine, and if the other options were turned down solely on the basis of nationality. So that's my walkthrough for critically analysing an article. I hope you've enjoyed it and it's been useful to whatever you're happening to read. If you want to get some bite-sized snippets of this kind of content, you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter. And if you want to see my future videos about improving our skills in critical thinking and issues in healthcare, then you can subscribe and click the bell icon and you'll be the first to get told when I upload a video. Hope you have a great day and see you in the next video.